of tonight talk about ArcGIS Online. I don't think we'll get through the whole lecture, which is okay because we're ahead already. And then we'll continue with ArcGIS Online Monday and get into ArcGIS Server JavaScript API. I think I set this too far behind. We talked about, oh no, here we are. So you've signed in, and feel free to play along. I know some of you are checking it out already, which is great. Feel free to play along with the slides. So the very first thing to do in ArcGIS Online is to make a map. So you click on Map, and as the slide shows, it comes up with this initial screen with the ESRI Topo map service. You can take some virtual tours on how to work with this, but we'll also go over a lot of the functionality ourselves. The first thing we need to do is choose a base map. So to click here, we can click on Select Base Map button here, and there are 10 options by default. You can go to Aerial Imagery. Aerial Imagery, the slight difference here is with labels. Sometimes we do that so people can see that imagery. Streets. That's going to be more exciting zoomed in. As you zoom in, streets go from just major streets to down. That actually might vary by the country. I should try somewhere else. The level of detail will vary by the country and region. In this particular example, there's very detailed streets, as there is here. I mean, gosh, they even have the names of the buildings in Delicate Complex in there. The topographic map is it's a it's a generic map that often can come in handy. I'm looking for somewhere where there's topography, but it'll also have ground contours and elevations on it. So if I zoom into southern Erie County, we see streets and features, but it also features, ground contours you can make out there. Sometimes, and we certainly have these situations, all you're looking for is a map backdrop. You're going to add your own data on top of it. You want the map to be in the background, not the foreground of your map. So you just want a muted style, a map. So there's a map in the background, but not really overpowering. They have this map in that case called dark gray canvas, which frankly looks better on the laptop than on the projector. It's really, really dark gray canvas on the projector. And similar to that is the light gray canvas. We have a couple of websites where we just want this as a backdrop. So you would put this map, which looks boring by itself, but then what you would do with this canvas is add your own GIS data on top of it. The National Geographic we've already looked at. There's another map service which contains more ocean detail if you're mapping the seas. Terrain with labels is similar. It has map terrain on it, but with major labels. So if you want your background to focus on topography, you might choose terrain with labels. And you can use as a backdrop the OpenStreetMap project, that open source data set where streets have been added by the general public. You can also add, and for any of these, I can click here, except for that one. If I click description, it brings up a description about the service, and it provides a link to the REST endpoint page on the description page. So I can click there and get to the REST endpoint. You can do that with any. I should have shown that. I'll bring it back up, including your own data. So even this June 10th layer that I just published, if I go to its description page, like we did before, I can click on the layers. Remember, I published states and counties, and I can get so this is the REST endpoint that has recreated when I uploaded that data. Just like we were looking at earlier, when we were looking at REST endpoints before the break-in on Monday. And that one, actually, I published it with a lot of different capabilities. There's a lot of supported operations on that. But notice it's got, when I uploaded my data to the SRI ArcGIS Online server, it gave me a unique REST endpoint page for this data that I uploaded. So you would have to copy that if you wanted to use it in code. Even ArcGIS Server does the same. So this is a mapped data set on our server at work, and notice it also has its own REST endpoint page, but notice it's to gis.ene.com. So often the very first thing you do going back to the screen is to change the base map. And then, like I said, I can search for layers. And I can search for layers within ArcGIS Online. I showed this earlier. And you can, like I noted, what I do want to show, there are other base maps out there available. You kind of have to search for them. They'll have this base map icon with them. Like here's one called World Boundaries and Places. It just has, it's called World Boundaries and Places, but it seems to be more just places. It gives you labels of major cities. One that I wanted to show that is of use, it's more designed for this country. It's not international. Is this USA Topo Maps? USA Topo Maps gives you a backdrop in this country. The USGS has produced topographic maps for 100 years or more of everywhere in the United States. So if you're familiar with using these maps, when I was a kid we would buy them as paper maps. You can add that. So these are that's the official USGS topographic map of UB, for example. So you can add that as your backdrop with USGS Topo. This I hadn't seen before. It's called U.S. Traffic Service. A lot of apps use this.
How do you remove the layer?
You right-click it, and that for the layers, the little triangle next to it, there's a remove.
Gotcha.
Is where you do that.
But like you can have so many layers, it starts one.
Yep. What I'm looking for in this is a legend. It looks like a lot of this data comes from people's Garmin's, and you can sign up. You can, or people's smartphone. You're driving with your smartphone in your pocket. You can. But this is a cool one. It's a data set ESRI, and you could add this to your map. It has current traffic incidents. Street closed. Intersection of Everett Road closed. And the red, this ought to be good. It gives lines indicating current traffic flow. Obviously, being about 6 o'clock and being Los Angeles, there's a lot of red there. That's where traffic has stopped. So that could be a useful layer. Having done this for so long, it's mind-boggling to me how much data is just out there for you to consume. That's a very new thing. Yes, they don't have it for every country. But they have it in many areas. London's all clear. Of course, it's the middle of the night there, so I'm not surprised. The hard thing, like anything with the web nowadays, is knowing what's out there. It's like with Google, like getting inventory of every website available. It's just not, there's so much available out there to get, it's hard to know what you can use. Someone could ask me, well, what background layers are available? I don't know. It changes daily, but the search lets you look for that. This is cool. This I just found. It's a backdrop of the world as of 1922. So you can overlay that on your website. That's not the one I'm thinking of. There's one that goes into even more detail. Even something like that's pretty cool. You can't zoom in too close. So there's a lot out there. Current wind conditions. As of 8 o'clock, it's 75 degrees with a wind. A gust of 54 miles an hour. What's going on with that? Looks like we had bad weather again. But it's gone. But you can also, okay, this is, you can limit it to ESRI map layers with this browse ESRI map layers. So there's a lot in here. It's not just backgrounds. I want to make that clear. I'm not sure I have. But there's a lot of feature data available also, like this. You know, if you wanted to know the boundaries of current Senate, you know, current U.S. senators. And they have it color coded by either Republican, Democrat, Independent, or a mix. World time zones and so on. So even ESRI, USA, this would be useful to a lot of USA land cover. So there's a lot in here, and every time, it's funny, every time I show this, there's more. I don't go in here and check every day, and every time I do get here, oh, they've added this and this and this. So all that is just available to the world. NAIP imagery. Sometimes for U.S. agricultural programs, sometimes is better imagery. And the land cover imagery shows a very detailed assessment of U.S. land cover in a raster format. So again, that's browse ESRI layers restricts the data to just ESRI published data. You can, if you knew a REST endpoint, let's say someone gave you a REST endpoint to their service, you can go to add layer from web and just add that one URL. You can, I think I'll show this either later tonight or Monday. You could upload your own, I have more and more field people doing this, upload your own shapefile. So upload your own data, bypass all the publishing that I talked about, just upload your own data set.
That was add layer from file.
Add layer from file. Now the caveat is, and we'll talk about this, it has to be zipped. You need to zip the shapefile into a zip file for it to be uploaded. But then search for layers also has options to search just Esri. So I could search for temperature layers just within Esri. Something that I find a lot, you can, if you do my organization, often that's what we'll do. These are just layers published by members of our UB College of Art and Sciences group. So like for lab, or if you've published data that you're playing around with, or for lab 3, that's the easiest way to get to your own organization's data is just say in my organization. And I'm glad to see. Here's one I published for a class a couple years ago, my bird photography. These are places where I've taken bird pictures, and we'll see how we can hyperlink later tonight or maybe tomorrow. So it was easy to find and add that because I published it into the UB organization. And just to, I think I showed this, but once you find the layer, you want to add, you just click the add link next to it. I think we see that. It'll say loading, and if it says remove, that's a good sign it's added the layer. I didn't. BW Conley, I'm not familiar with that person. They added a map of federal wetlands, and then it says remove. I can remove it that way or the way I described earlier. Right click, remove. So I can add layer from file, choose a file, and then I can add a zipped shape file. Figure out where I had that. This in summer 2015. So in this I have a zip file here. I can select it. I think that's what I did. It just dawned on me. When uploading your own zip file, I wish you could do this when you published a service. You can generalize features for web display. If you have shapes in your shapefile that are very detailed, you can click that to make them draw faster. So it's going to think the Alaska coastline. If there's a very detailed fjords and all that, it'll generalize that. Oops. Okay. Well, you'd have to pick a smaller shapefile to do that. So say, I'm going to click New Map. I'm going to add some layers. See, now this one's slow. This was one, oh, I wanted to This is the layer I want to add. If you're in your in ArcGIS Online, you can click My Content and see the layers and stuff that you've added. Right from there, I can right-click a feature layer and say Add Layer to New Map. So this one adds quickly. So I'm going to add that. I'm going to change the base map. I'm going to make some changes.
It's in my content and then add.
Yeah, you might not see as much. I mean, I have more stuff in my content, but yeah, correct. And maybe I'll add my bird photos. Yes?
I'm just curious, will there be any maybe projection or coordinate system problem in any of our own data?
There could be. And in fact, the one layer was rejected. It does its best. I mean, if the data set has a projection defined, there shouldn't be. It should project it on the fly for you. But that's a really good question. If you're designing your own map, I always project everything to the same projection first before loading it to ArcGIS Online.
Well, will it be maybe if you were using a base map or other layers? Well,
The base maps say that the base maps are in Web Mercator, and you know I haven't recently. I used to have trouble when this all first started. I have not had trouble with that lately. Like for example, for our project in Pennsylvania, I project everything to Pennsylvania State Plane. But you're right, the background imagery is in a projection called Web Mercator. That doesn't seem to cause a problem anymore. It used to. We used to, which drive me crazy, have to project everything to Web Mercator, which no one wanted to do.
well, I didn't find anywhere to separate layers projection.
Yeah.
Information.
Yeah, there should be. It's all like kind of hidden sometimes, and it bothers me. So it just works, which is great when it just works. But when it doesn't work, it's hard. You kind of have to try and figure it out. But it's a good question. When you're in control of all the data, I would certainly project everything to the same projection. A very good point.
So what did you just add to your map from your content?
I added my U.S. states GEO, and you all should be able to see this. U.S. states _ GEO 503 _ 2015.
Okay.
That state layer adds quickly, and I found this. I had done this last year. This bird photos. You could add whatever you want. It doesn't have the same things, but if you did want to add those, I think you would have access to both those layers. They seem to draw quick, and this, as the name implies, those are locations where I've taken bird and nature pictures.
Yeah, of course, I just want to see what
So when you zoom in, there's a problem. I've never been there. So we'll see what you can do in a minute with data, but you can click on the data, get information about the point, which in this case is a photograph, or click on the state. In the lab, we'll talk a little bit about this. It's probably going to be Monday at this point. We will see shortly, we might get started, how you can format. You just get an ugly table. You can format this into a nice pop-up that's easier for the public to read, and you'll do that as part of Lab 3.
Okay.
You'll even attach.
So we'll do that part in the code.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll see also how you can link. Like for my own personal page, I'll pick one that's more in the middle. I've got the date I took the picture, and I link to a blog where the picture is located. So you'll also see in the lab, you'll link to, I'll have you put the flag of the state embedded into the pop-up, and then you'll link to a Wikipedia page about the flag. So we've worked, let's say you're satisfied with the layers you have. I then click Save, and we name our map. I can call it, for example, Greg's Class Demo, June 10th, 2015. Tags are required. That annoys me kind of. I mean, in my internal orgs, I give everyone the links to the map. Tags are for the general public. When you search tornado or temperature, they show up. I don't care because at my company I just give everyone the link. There's no need for that, but it's required. So I can click Save Map. So now this is what we call a web map. The data are feature layers or map layers, and now I have a web map. The best analogy is to an MXD or a map document. It's like an online version of an MXD. And I can click Share and choose who to share the map with. Right now, you won't see my map. I haven't shared it with anyone. I can share it with the public. Oh, I wish that would have stayed. Okay. Although you are sharing this map with everyone, copy and use the shortened URL link on this dialog. And there isn't one on the dialog. That's interesting. Oh no, yeah, it's down here. So a couple things. I can only share it if I chose. I could just say, share this map only. The reason this is coming up is that I haven't shared the data. Just like an MXD and your shapefile are separate, the feature layer and the map are separate. The analogy would be the feature layer is like the shapefile, the MXD is like the web map. So it's wanting me to update the sharing of my data to match the map. I'll just click that so that goes away. So I can share, I could choose to just share this map with this group. Like say I didn't want this to leave the classroom, and if I just click that, only those of you in the class would be able to see the map. So what the other pop-up was talking about is you can link the map, you can copy and paste. You certainly could copy and paste the long URL up there, the SUNY Buffalo maps.rts.com. Or every time you make a web map, it gives you a short URL. So you could copy and paste this short URL and send it to your friends and family. You can also share it to Facebook. So now if I go, everyone's going to be wondering what I'm up to now. So on my Facebook page, it has a link to the map. As we want to, that makes them very happy. They want to spread the word about RTS Online, how wonderful it is. It sounds like a toy. Oh, I can put this on Facebook. Here's how they explain where that could be useful. Let's say you're a utility. Or here you go. This will be more. I'll buffaloize the example. Say there's a lake effect snowstorm, and a number of roads are closed because they haven't been plowed. You're the Erie County Highway Department, and you're recording that in RTS Online. You could make your map and then share it to the Erie County Facebook page or Erie County's Twitter page. So that's the real. It seems like, oh, that's just playing around to put it on Facebook, but that's why they built that, because a lot of organizations, especially government nowadays, share information to the public using social media. And that's a way you can do that. Remember we talked about geolocation last week? Did anyone catch the story? There was an incident with ISIS where they found an ISIS compound because a terrorist shared a picture of himself.
A picture in the background, something in the background.
I think he didn't turn geolocation off, is the way someone explained it, and he posted a picture to Facebook or something, and they were able to get the location of the compound via geolocation, and the compound no longer exists. So I thought about that, so I'm going to mention that because we were just talking about geolocation, social media, and then I read that story online. So that's a way. So now that I've saved this, I think now you should be able to, well, the way I click this, anyone with an RTS Online account in the world could see it, including you. Obviously there's nothing on here sensitive, but in my company, And in many organizations, that's more of an issue, and these groups are a very important way of restricting that. I was just talking to one of my associates today about that, where we have a project because we're working for companies and working for the government. We have two different projects going on where some people can't know about each project. So the lady I talked to who wants to use ArcGIS Online and Collector was very nervous about that, and I explained to her I could set up a group. In fact, the only people in the group are her and I. So that eased her concerns. You know, she said, I have coworkers that can't know about this project. It's not even just the general public, but there's people down the hall from me that can't know about the project. So these groups enable us to provide that level of security. And I know it's important because it just came up today.
Even this, as far as being, it's still online, so is it?
Yes, it's still online, and that with that comes that risk. People are more and more accepting. It's funny, that's been to me a major attitudinal change just in the past 2 years. When I first started mentioning ArcGIS Online to people, they're like, well, go away. Get out of my face with that. And we're getting more and more acceptance. Even the U.S. military, I think, is in negotiations and talking about getting cloud. I mean, people are really it's become a way of life. We have data that belongs to oil companies about potential pipelines. It's worth a lot of money. Yeah, but they're okay with it. Where just a couple of years ago they would have said no. Yeah. I mean, those pipes, they're worth billions of dollars. Or none of the military emergency services. It's becoming accepted, and it's becoming accepted quickly. Esri has, we just talked about this today. Esri has some white papers about the security of the data, and again, it's over my head. I'm not a web security person. Our web guy read it and he says, "Yeah, that's pretty good." So I take his word for it. But anything online can be broken into, to be honest. You're also, anonymity. There's so much data out there that in most cases there's data somewhere else that's more interesting. That's my thought too, than the stuff I have. But you're right. Esri does a good job from everyone that knows better at security. But that is an inherent risk with anything you put online. You look at all the break-ins and things that have occurred. Another problem that I always raise, and is you should not rely totally on ArcGIS Online. I mean, what if you lose connection to the internet? I was telling Esri about that. It's like, well, we have 1,000 backup servers, and it's never down. I'm not worried about Esri being down. I'm worried about me being down. Right. And I read somewhere about that being a problem in Japan with the tsunami, where they had a lot of the data stored on servers. The data was still there. Data was in the cloud, but the local internet grid was there. No one had an internet connection to get to it. So especially if you're in a situation where you're working for emergency management, keep a backup local copy needs to be in place. So upload all your great data to the cloud somewhere, and then you lose access to it when you can't get to the internet anymore. Although even the way they're building double checks onto the internet, I've been told that the days are almost over of the internet being down. They have so much Verizon, and I'm relying on what other people tell me. Verizon, for example, is building so much redundancy to their LTE, 4G, that it's really unlikely the internet will ever be completely down. So it's really a new world that we're living in. It's exciting and scary. Just physically, where you put the data to it. In 2001, the New York City GIS data center was in the World Trade Center, and when that happened, they lost all their GIS data when the building went down, at a time when they needed it more than ever. And very luckily, ESRI had been working with them on a project. ESRI had a backup of all their data in Boston at the ESRI office because they were developing a website for them. And I'm told they took the hard drive in a car and drove down I-95 to New York, and it kind of saved the day. So you even have to think about physically where you put your data. Don't put it in a high-profile location. 920. So we won't go too much further. It's 9:20. Just want to make sure I covered. We talked about a bunch of different things there. Let's see, cover everything in the slides. So I think we covered all this searching. We adding a layer. It has to be a zip file. I wonder if UB put that, because I've never gotten that message before about the file size, and the states file isn't that big. I'm wondering if UB put that limit on. I don't know that for sure. When it gave me the error message when I tried to upload my shapefile before. We saved a map, and I showed you how you can share the map. So I'll do a couple of these things, and then we'll stop. There's a lot of things you can do with the layer controls. You can change a lot of different settings related to our layers in an ArcGIS Online map. And I go through most of them here. And to get to that, you click on the little triangle next to the map layer. The list of items may differ based on what type of layer it is. Excuse me. So one is transparency. Say I wanted the background to show through. I'll change it to National Geographic. By default, the layer is opaque. So I've got this nice National Geographic map. I can't even see it. So if I click on that layer and set transparency, I can make them semi-transparent. Between 100%, which you probably don't want to do because it's in 0. I can show table. Okay, I should have another slide in there. But just like right-clicking a layer and saying Open Attribute Map in ArcMap, I can click Show Table and get the attribute table in ArcGIS Online here down here. And I can click to select a record, just like in ArcMap.
You did show table.
Show Table, yeah. Center on, and then table options here. I don't think I have a slide on that, but it's worth showing. Table options, I picked center on selection, clear selection. See, this is similar to in ArcMap. But say, let me pick Iowa. It turns blue. I can say table options, center on selection. And just like, oh, that doesn't show up at all on the projector, but just like in ArcMap, when a table record is blue, Iowa is shaded blue too, though you can't see it at all up here.
I'm sorry, can you go back to how you got the table?
So, okay, no problem. You click the triangle here and it's show table.
Yeah.
It's right at the bottom, so it might be off the screen.
So the table is just like the attribute table?
Exactly. That's exactly what it is actually, is the attribute table. Correct.
I noticed that you have an add column that is.
Yeah, I was just seeing that too.
Can you add a row or?
Yep, we'll do that probably Monday. You can remember when it had the different operations and I clicked on create, edit, I checked those on. Because I checked those on, you will be able to do that. You could prevent someone from doing that by not checking those on. So add field. Because I enabled those capabilities, I can actually add a new field to my table. And I can click on, this is like identify now. I can click on the state, get its pop-up. We'll talk more about pop-ups Monday, but notice I can actually click edit and make changes. So I've made a change to the attribute table. I can even move it. And now you see the dangers of allowing editing. I just moved Maine out into the Gulf of St. Lawrence. There's no undo. Like Maine is now. I'll try to put it back. I probably didn't put it back where I should. I could rotate, squish it around and do all this stuff. So the moral of that story is to think about granting those permissions before you do. So that's part of that lesson. Since it's just about 9:30, so why don't we stop? It's getting late, and we'll pick that up. We'll talk more about ArcGIS Online at the start on Monday, and possibly even get into the JavaScript API for the first time on Monday.